Hi, my name is Corey Reeser, and this is my fifth and final fieldwork observation for the EDU 476 Fieldwork Practicum unit. This one I taught in the computer lab. I actually requested this because I did this in conjunction with a federalism lesson that my master teacher had taught and that the students weren't really getting the concept of. So my master teacher actually provided this to me as a means of, or this just day's lesson to enhance the effectiveness of federalism content material instruction. Brief backdrop, the school is at Chaffee High School. The classroom is 36 students in my first period class, all consisting of high school seniors ranging from ages 17 to 18 years old. There are 12 EL students in this class, and in this particular situation for this particular activity in the computer lab, I actually like to designate my EL students in one section of the computer lab. That way I don't have to pop around all over the computer lab between my EL students to explain the same thing. They're all in the same area, and if I need to show them something on the computer or how to access a legitimate source on whatever they're researching, in this case federalism, they're all in the same location and all can watch me, and it doesn't require as much investment of my time. So it's just a classroom management skill at a basic level. Before I get started into what I did, I want to talk about the application of theory of part 6 of the reading. And basically, this incorporates that my strategies for mitigating uncertainty was just identified with basically, I wouldn't say segregating, but grouping my EL students in one area. That way I can deal with the amount of effort that has to go into each student, within pairs of 2 or 3 within the same setting, and may not even have to go that much further because all the students still have the ability to hear me give instruction. So that's one way of mitigating what would otherwise be an extremely time-inducive aspect of my classroom management, and I wouldn't necessarily be able to give much time to the other 24 students in my class. So I had to constantly balance my considerations between my EL and special needs students and the rest of the students in the class who still deserve the same attention that I'm giving the others. One more note that I would like to share would be just a dilemma of practice, especially within the context of this lesson, had to do with the students' understanding of what the content material is and then the direct application of that content material in terms of researching a current event. So when you're dealing with federalism, I identified this was the same PowerPoint I used during the activity. It's the constitutional relationship between state and federal governments of the United States, and basically how they interact with one another. And going further, the current event, here's the guidelines. I wanted the students to research a current event where federalism is a part of the issue. What I didn't really basically come into the lesson prepared to deal with was the students being able to apply federalism into and plug it into the elements of the current event. So how to transfer, okay, what's a state and local controversy in current terms. And I was actually quite surprised that many of my students didn't really know, well, federalism, state and local, and the federal government. So where are they arguing? They didn't really know how to transfer that into a current event, or that concept into a current event. So I had to go through the process with all of my EL students and many of my non-EL students as well to describe to them, hey, this is how you apply a learning concept into a real world scenario. So that was something I had to actually set aside time for, and that was one teaching dilemma of practice that I really hadn't considered because they were high school seniors, and I figured they would already have these educational skills with them when they entered this project. So once they researched their current event on federalism, I had them identify the title and URL of their article. This was all based off of the worksheet that was provided to them. They were then required to identify the state and federal disagreement. So the state and feds are disagreeing. Why are they disagreeing? I guess one example I believe I provided later on that I'll go into. I provided the students with 2 examples on possible ideas they could use, but only one group could use the examples provided. So they were next basically required to research that article, and I wanted them to identify if the article was argumentative or informative. So did the article that they were reading regarding the state and federal dispute, I really emphasized, did they think that the article was trying to persuade them to take a position, or did it simply provide information and leave the opinion up to the reader? And this was another element that I actually came prepared to guide my students through, because I had previously run into this problem when having my students try and develop an argument itself. They didn't know the difference between persuasive and informative arguments. So I had to guide them through the process of, some key indicators of what would be an argumentative essay and what would be an informative essay. They were then supposed to identify why the article was written and the position the author takes. So that is almost answered within the argumentative and informative portion. So does the author take a position, or does he simply provide information? They were then supposed to identify how the current event relates to federalism, so applying basically the content material to their situation, so applying the application of the theory of federalism into a current event. And they were required to give a brief opinion regarding whether or not this article changed their position on that current event. And this was actually the most important piece that I wanted them to write up on, because I wanted to hear what they thought based off of the information they read. Because one thing I always emphasize is to keep an open mind and always look at the research. And by keeping an open mind, you're able to identify, and I always emphasize this to my students, that if you hold a position and you are shown through research that the position is flawed, then a change of position is required. So this is something that I constantly emphasize to my students, just to keep an open mind and always listen to an argument before basically shutting yourself down. And so when you're dealing with the current So here is, sorry about that. So here are the current events that I provided to my students. You had the executive orders on immigration, that basically the states are disagreeing with President Obama's executive order providing temporary legal status for certain immigrants within the confines of the United States. Regulations such as EPA regulations on hydrocarbon production, the Keystone Pipeline, that's a major area of contention. Court decisions on same-sex marriage and state law, federal versus state policy on marijuana laws, and individual rights, talking about the Oregon militia standoff. So these were just some current event examples that I provided to my students. A couple used I believe only 2 of these examples were actually used. So the students actually went on their own and decided to research things that they found interesting. But for the most part, that this whole lesson was extremely beneficial, because I taught my students a significant amount about basically persuasive and argumentative forms of the political process. And when you're researching an issue on government, that there are many different levels of speculation and criticism, and it's important to identify whether or not those levels of criticism are accurate and legitimate. So basically, I identified, the mitigating circumstances that I encountered during this lesson and during the 5 lessons that I have encountered. And also while sharing my the dilemmas that I encountered and the methods that I used in order to basically enhance my instruction in the context of mitigating those very circumstances that led to the dilemmas in the first place. So I wasn't necessarily prepared for them, but the information that I learned in this class and the classes that I've taken prior gave me the tools and equipped me to basically tackle these problems head on and deal with them within the confines of my classroom instruction. And that is my final and fifth fieldwork reflection for EDU 476.